All right, I'm calling to order the April regular meeting of the Darien Parks and Recreation Commission. It is April 9th, 7:30 at the Wheat Beach Paddle Hut. Calling to order. Welcome back to the Paddle Hut. I'm always very happy when we move back here because it means spring is on its way. So just, I like this space better than that other room anyway. So welcome. Welcome back, and we'll be here through September and then switch back in October. Okay, first order of business is the minutes from the March 19th meeting, which I did review. They seem to be out of order, but I did review them. I feel like I'm on the same page. But anyway, did anybody have any questions, changes, comments? I thought they looked great. Okay, can I have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Ed, Jim second. I can vote because I've checked out the rules on this. You can vote even if you weren't at the meeting, believe it or not. And I also did watch the video, so we're good on that. So everybody, any opposed? No. Okay, so we're good. Okay, any public comment?
Anything or on minutes?
Would anybody like to speak in public comment?
I would like to speak about.
Okay,
Now's your time. What?
now is your time.
Okay,
Now is your time.
so.
Stand, name, address, you know the drill, Jan.
Do you care if I stand or sit?
What TV 79, is it better if she stands?
She was there, I get it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm Jan Raymond, I live at 11 Waverly Road in Darien, and I wanted to express some concerns I have about the information that was posted, or the new information that was posted online on the information about bidding for the Wheat Beach project. And I'll just say a few things. One, I was sorry to see that what I think is being referred to as a trail, I think of as a road because of the width and everything else. I was sorry to see that in there as paving. I was not concerned about the paved area that goes down to where the junior sailors keep their boats and where people can take down their kayaks and whatever, paddle boards or whatever they want. I think that small area paving that, of course, well, I don't have another way. I think that that's the best way to do it. So that's one thing I'm opposed to, and one thing I think makes sense. But the other thing that I'm concerned about is the whole grill area, the 5 grill sites with the, I think it's going to be over 700 more square feet of paved area. It's a lot. And I think 5 grills is a lot. And I'm wondering, we have a wonderful area over behind the tennis courts where there are 2 or 3 grills and a bunch of picnic tables. And my sense is that people in the community don't really know it's there. And I notice in the planning that has been going on with Park and Rec that no mention of the picnic area has come up as something that should be looked at as part of this program. And I guess one of the things that I would like to see is, I'd like to see that whenever you decide cleaned up and whatever. And I would like to make people aware of that and how it can work. It's right on the water. It's also next to woods, and has some very, I think, beautiful things about it. It's run down. It's not well kept. And I would rather see, before we go to a ton of other grills, I would like to see Park and Rec put some time into that and have people aware that this is there. Because every time, I had conversations today, and I've had a bunch of times with people who've lived here as long as I have, maybe not as long as I have, but they don't know it's there. And I was talking to somebody that was fishing over there and did not realize that those grills were for public use. I don't know if they still work anymore, but I would like to see more emphasis on taking care of what we have and promoting what we have before we go into building more grills and space. And however it's decided, in my view, 5 is too many. I just think that it's a lot and could be very loud. If there's a couple of families at each grill, which I don't think there would be because I don't know. These grills are not used. And I would just like to see these cleaned up and let everybody know what they are. And then if we find that those are used and we have developed a little bit more reason to say we need more grills and we need a lot of them, then that makes more sense to me. And I think Park and Rec, part of Park and Rec's job is to look at the parks and the recreation area. And I've never seen it in any of these discussions. So those are my concerns, the amount of paving that's going on. I think it's over 700 square feet of paving for the grills, so 800 square feet of paving, which adds a lot more impervious surface. And I would I don't know, I think I probably made myself fairly clear. And I would love to know what you all think.
Thanks, Jan. Anybody else?
Yes. Time limit on public comment, or is?
Sometimes we set it 2 to 3 minutes, I think, because there aren't a lot of folks here tonight. We didn't time it, but yeah, we generally like to keep it to 2 to 3 minutes.
I'll keep mine. I'm James Caulfield. I live over 23 Rush Island Road, right behind the park. Due to traveling, not often being here, work-related items, I haven't gotten any notice about pickle courts and what's going on. I was notified yesterday that there's supposed to be a sound test going on heard by a local concerned neighbor. And so that's why I thought I'd come tonight and just voice my concern about the noise. And I know right now the thought is maybe just doing one court, but it always doesn't turn into one, it turns into the whole group. And I worry about that. For us being neighbors, and it's it probably sound like a squeaky wheel, but it's a common issue with pickle courts anywhere, and it's the noise issues. And I feel that we as your neighbor have not been noticed, have been notified of what's happening, being told that's what the Parks and Recreation would like to do. We'd like to see sound testing done, what's going to actually happen, when it's going to happen, and has every other option been explored. Being a member of Ox Ridge, they have paddle courts that aren't being used at all during the summer. Do a program with them, they could use probably some of the subsidies there. Other options, I'm a developer and we're doing work in New Jersey. We're on top of a parking garage. We're doing pickle courts up there for tenants, but up and away from it to keep noise away from the active community. We have a new parking garage here in town that's for the office building for that section. Not used at evenings or nighttime, maybe we use that. What options have been explored and the issues that we're going to be impacted with having it here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Adele, do you have anything?
No, except for the budget passed.
You said what?
The budget passed. Well, the Park and Rec budget.
Board of Finance, so.
Board of Finance, so we're finished, and now we're moving on to the RTM
So we'll cover that
in May.
generally.
Right.
Board of Finance passed the budget as this plan is with the road in it.
That will be addressed separately once the bids come in. It doesn't get part of this budget. It's in the 6-year
I'm
plan.
sorry, I didn't hear you right.
Because this project in Weed Beach would be bonded,
Yeah.
they don't go through this approval process. They get bid and then they get approved by approval of the bonding.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's separate. Okay. All right. Next in our primary agenda item this evening is a guided discussion related to the 2026 Town Plan of Conservation and Development. I guess most of you have heard it referred to as the POCD. This is an important document to the town and to Parks and Rec because it is a guiding document that is very much taken into account as projects are pursued in town. For instance, when we went for our approvals on both Weed Beach and Pear Tree, in addition to the technical approvals that we needed for planning and zoning in terms of, are the curbs high enough, all that, the very technical things about the water flows and whatever, we separately for each project, we're required to go to P&Z and get an acknowledgement and approval that the plan we were proposing is consistent with the plan of conservation and development. So that was a separate step in our project. So as Parks and Rec moves forward and thinks about what we want to do in the next 10 years, is we're updating our own master plan. For instance, it's a governing document. So our input really is important. I was going to say it later, but I'll say it now. There's a survey out there for residents to fill out. I think one of the first questions is, are you a resident? Do you work and live here? Do you only work here, et cetera, et cetera? So they're trying to get very broad input. I would really urge all of you to complete it. It took, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes maybe. That's open until April 18th, Jeremy?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, you can get it linked through the town website, or what is it?
We have little cards here that I'll pass out. So I'll pass
Cards.
these around to everyone.
So I would really urge all of you to please take the time to do that. It's really
I
important.
did mine today.
You did yours today, good. Share with your friends, neighbors, spouses, adult, children, anybody.
Children.
Children? Okay, children. Now, we were expecting to have our conversation guided tonight by the representative of the consulting firm, and I understand he had a fender bender. He is
Yes.
fine, but was not able to be here. So our conversation will be ably led by Jeremy Ginsberg. I hope all of you know Jeremy. I don't even know how many years you've worked in town, but he's our Director of Land
Director of Land Use, yes.
Use. So all of our applications, I mean, just so much of what we're working on goes through Jerry's department. He's been a wonderful counsel and partner to me. And so I know he can handle this. The consultant will be able to watch the video. Thank you, TV 79. And then if he has further questions, he certainly isn't, we'll invite him to come back and meet with us at a future date. But given that we had this on the agenda, I thought, we should go ahead. We sent the questions out in advance to everybody. Hi, John. So we are, I gave you guys a heads up to make sure you took a little time to think about them. So hopefully you've all done that. But I am going to let Jeremy take it away. I don't know if you just want to go through the questions.
Sure, thanks, Lori.
Or any more introduction.
Great. So as Lori mentioned, the town plan by state statute needs to be done once every 10 years. This is what the last town plan looks like. It was done in 2016. And believe it or not, 2026 will be here before we know it. So as Lori mentioned, we've hired the firm of Hardesty & Hanover, sometimes known as H&H, to help guide us through the process. This is the first of many meetings we'll be having with boards, commissions, agencies of the town, small environmental groups, architecture review board, sewer commission, little this, little that, to get a flavor for the town, because this document affects areas of conservation, development, infrastructure, transportation. It's a guide for the community for the next 10 years. So Hardesty & Hanover has just started. We just brought them on board. They've set up the website, which is on this card. The website shows both the last town plan, and it has a very quick 10-second survey, but it also has a link to this more extensive survey. It's also going to link to other important documents of the town and give you a status of where we are and where they are throughout this process. As I said, Hardesty & Hanover is also trying to do some general outreach, so you may be seeing them at various town events over the next few months. You might see them at the farmer's market. You might see them at the Memorial Day parade. You might see them at Cafe Nero as they try to reach out to the community and get input from people of all ages, people who live in town, work in town, whatever. So we're very excited. It's always a fun, interesting project. Hear what the community has to say. And, Darien changes little by little, and so what's on the plate for the next few years? What Neil has done is looked at a number of documents to help guide the conversation tonight. This document, the old town plan, or the plan of conservation and development, he looked at the last park and recreation master plan and talks a little bit about trends. What this document did was inventory the many park facilities we have, both the active facilities, say Cherry Lawn, Weed Beach, and some of the more passive, Stony Brook Park, Woodland Park, where there's just walking paths, there's not much activity. So one of his questions to kick off is, there's been, as Jennifer and I talked, many improvements in the parks through the years, little by little. New playgrounds you had mentioned, various maintenance to each park throughout the years, but new things coming all the time. Pickleball, as we heard, is one. There's pickleball now in Cherry Lawn. But what Neil talked about, what items or what major projects, I know Weed Beach is moving along potentially, Pear Tree is in the pipeline as well. Other projects that have recently either been done over the past few years or go beyond Weed and Pear Tree.
Who wants to kick it off? I don't want to do all the talking. I will if nobody answers. Well, to get people's juices flowing, I say, you mentioned we've now completed, thank you, Janet, for the last one, we completed the 3 playgrounds, which
Yep.
was, a pretty heavy lift. I think we have 3 really terrific playgrounds that are all getting a lot of usage.
Well, ADA accessible as
And we were
well.
able to go from having 1 ADA accessible playground in town now to having all 3 of those playgrounds, and plus we have the 4th here at Weed. So we have 4 accessible playgrounds. So really, as I said, most of our, what you referred to, I think probably as our active parks, all now have terrific new accessible playgrounds. I think we're all really, really proud of that. A few years ago, with the help of the Darien Athletic Foundation, we were able to take the Diller property, which is a park, which was
Right.
kind of a mess, and create a nice trail. It loops into the high school and their whole cross-country
Cross-country,
running
yeah.
trail. So now that's a property that is utilized by the public. We're able to add parking, a couple parking spaces.
Well, it's also a partnership between the schools and the Parks
Yes.
Department. You had this 5-acre property right next to the school that was getting just overgrown and you couldn't even walk through it.
It was a
really.
dumping ground, yeah. So,
And so it really turned that into a benefit not only for the general public, but now the school's able to
Yes.
create this nice cross-country loop
Yeah.
around the school. I think we walked that property 2-3 years ago.
yeah, and that was a terrific partnership with the Athletic Foundation, who really spearheaded that, because our cross-country team was one of the few in their council or whatever that could not host meets because they didn't have a cross-country track. So that was a nice win.
What we talked about, what's not in the plan, because we didn't own it then, was Highland Farm, which is
Yes.
kind of interesting when you talk about, oh, Darien doesn't change much, little by little. Highland Farm was purchased 5 to 7 years ago, obviously since the last town plan, and it's being used for various recreation-type activities. It's got a number of different uses going on, does have some limits, but it's flat, it's open. We created 2 parking areas, one on the north side, one on the west side, and you see people walking out there in all kinds of weather, jogging, walking. So that has been another benefit, that if people in the northern part of town don't want to drive all the way somewhere else, they have something now in their neighborhood.
Yep. Yep. Also, spearheaded by Mary Louise and her advisor, we've done a lot of work on remediating the invasive plants that were taking over our parks. We started with cherry lawn. We're able to take back a lot of usable space and really clear many of our trees, which were at risk of being compromised, and giving them a chance to breathe again. In addition, we planted a lot of trees in that park, and we've done work. I would disagree a little bit with Mrs. Raymond that we haven't taken care of this area. Our team has actually done a tremendous amount of work over here to open it up, clear the invasives. It's amazing. I'm really proud of the work they did over there, and people do use it. So guys, chime in. I don't want to do all the talking. Chris, please.
Sure. I think going back, Lori assigned us homework to make sure we were reading through everything. I did my homework. Certainly, you mentioned Highland wasn't necessarily a thing. Pickleball didn't exist.
Right?
Right?
You're
So
right.
certainly something that we're looking into, certainly something that the community has a lot of different feelings about. I think that if you look at 16 and then you look at the 2018 Parks and Rec survey, that survey actually had a lot to do, or a fair amount, with our playgrounds, which I think we've been able to address and quite nicely during that time. So I think that's a very strong sign to people who do actually take the time to fill out the surveys, that they are being listened to, and we're trying to work through as much as we can. Everyone has an opinion, everyone wants theirs to be the number
Yes.
one, but it doesn't always work, and that's our job, to try and listen to everybody and do our best. I think that, I can sit here and go through a list of certain things that are there, but I think the biggest overarching focus, certainly that wasn't there in 2015-16, and barely coming on as an idea in 2018, is the addition of the new units throughout town. The development downtown, the development over in Norotan, there's more development still forthcoming. We've got a lot. And these are going to be folks who, I haven't seen all the plans, but I don't know how much green space they have. I don't know if a lot of these locations are going to allow pets, so what they're going to be doing with those. I think the one good thing that we have is, it's not perfect, but we do have a fair amount of data for what we use in terms of not only the programming, but, at least reservations, things for paddles, reservations for, events that we do through the town. I think as much as, our Parks and Rec department can dump data that H&H has the ability to go ahead and look through, so that decisions that are made or questions that are even going to be, posited towards residents of the town are going to be based on, at least some supportive data that we have right now. So it's not just, hey, we want a Frisbee golf course all of a sudden. I mean, I'm not saying somebody couldn't say that, but we've heard that thus far. So I think that while we'll deal with the general feedback of folks that are here, I think the larger long-term also has to be focused on the folks who are not here yet, that will continue to be here, that I think will put a fair amount of usage on our parks and beaches.
Yes, Ed?
Well, picking up on something you said, and I guess more because I'm new, but there's the question here about the pool and the fact that this was asked before. And I guess, again, I haven't been here that long, but I never heard anybody talking about a pool. So was this a thing a while ago?
Yeah.
Or
It was a thing. The pool did come up in the last survey, and shortly after the Short Lane property was acquired, our then first selectman, Jamie Stevenson, charged a group of us. I had just joined the commission, Amy had just joined the commission, a few other people who have since come and gone, to start thinking about what we could do and how we could incorporate that parcel into the park. And at that time, we hired Weston and Sampson. This was before we actually selected them to do the full master plan, to look at options. And one of the options that many community members were interested in, and that Weston and Sampson said was possible, was to have the community pool over there. There was a lot of pushback on that. It didn't happen. I won't go through all of the iterations. And at that point, we said, well, look, we're going to do the whole master plan. We hired Weston and Sampson to complete that, and if you look through it, the two places that Weston and Sampson identified as suitable for a public pool, solely within our parks properties, this is not saying anywhere else in Darien, but solely within the inventory of parks property, were, again, the open space over here at Weed Beach or Cherry Lawn. Neither of those options have proven to be particularly palatable for our community. So we really, as a commission, haven't spent any more time in the last few years talking about a community pool. Now, when the Great Island surveys were done, John can attest, again, a lot of interest in the community pool, but while the master plan is still in process, what I'm seeing, and John and I just left a Great Island meeting, it does not appear that Great Island has been identified as pool potential. So that is something that is that the community through various surveys has definitely expressed an interest in, but how we resolve that as a town, I don't know.
And we'll just stick on the pool. Did we ever cost it out? What would it cost someone to actually be a member of the pool?
Not in terms of membership, no. I think, as I recall, we had a very rough cost of what it would cost to build a pool. And of course, there's a difference in terms of, is it just a seasonal outdoor pool versus a enclosed structure?
Should it be
like the
designed
one
for high school use?
Right.
That was one of the questions, if I
Yeah.
recall, is because, hey, the high school could use it. Because at the time, I think when they were building the high school, the question was, should we build a pool? That's how long I've been there, as part of the high school.
Well,
Yes.
I would, when we do this plan, to the extent we can, I think when we do these surveys, a lot of times you ask someone, do you want this? And the easy answer is, oh yeah, I want
Oh,
that.
sure.
But it's really helpful, I think, to say, well, do you want this? It's gonna cost you this. And whether that's a user fee or whether that's what we're gonna have to spend to do it.
As
And I think,
taxpayers, yeah.
because, certainly John and Board of Finance, everybody else is having to think of trade-offs, this cost versus that cost. But somebody who's just answering a survey, and we're taking that data and saying, a lot of people said they wanted this, but they didn't maybe realize how much that was gonna cost. And so I just think that's helpful. if
Yeah, I
we-
mean, Jeremy, I could be misremembering, but somehow I have that way back then, if you did like an enclosed, like pool building, it was something like $75 million.
I don't remember, but I remember there were a lot of questions of, is it outdoor or is it indoor? Or is it indoor outdoor? Is it at the school property or is it a more, as you acknowledge, a more public property that, and so, because you couldn't go swimming at the high school during school hours, they wouldn't want people coming in and out. So we got into a little bit of those issues. Of course, that drove the costs. But like with any town plan, there's always, what is the town? We're working on the plan for the next year and a half in the environment we're in today. When you look at old town plans, one of the town plans from many years ago, the big issue was commercial office park development, which none of us have said that phrase in 20 years, but that was a hot topic back in 1968 or 72. And in another plan, it was a different thing. So the environment we're in today, you acknowledge there's a lot of growth. Chris said, there is a lot of growth going on today. In Roten Heights, downtown, different types of growth than Darien has traditionally seen. What issues does that bring to the community? Maybe that'll be, continue on for the next year and a half. Maybe it won't be an issue in the next plan. But it's something that's the environment we're in today. And you're right, a pool is not really a hot topic now. It's not something people are talking about. They're talking about Great Island. They're talking about other more urgent, getting some of the beach projects off the ground, so to speak. Pickleball, as we acknowledge. And that may change in 5 years. So,
But I thought that a pool did, in the survey that we did for Great Island, it came out pretty high, didn't it?
Yeah,
It did, but to Ed's point, a lot of the options that they talked about in the surveys didn't have costs attached to them. And I've said to that group publicly that eventually when you start to really get down to what people want, you can't get them to calibrate their choices without those kinds of numbers. The difficult thing is that, to Jeremy's point, the cost of these pools can vary dramatically depending on whether it's four-season or not. Some of the geology and topography on Great Island is extraordinarily difficult, which would make putting a pool down there, in my judgment, prohibitively expensive. But it's also hard to come up with a cost figure to give people even a directional sense of something like that unless you have some engineering on it. And so even though we wanted to present a lot of the survey choices with something that would help people qualify their choices, it was really hard to do without spending a lot more money to get even rough cost estimates. And so I think people just need to pick things with their spidey sense on, which is sidewalks are going to cost a lot less money than a giant four-season pool and just make those choices accordingly. So nothing's ever easy as they say.
And Lori, I know it's John as well. Do you think that when, gathering information from residents right now, should we have, Parks and Rec and what is currently there as one section and then Great Island as another? I feel like a lot of residents would be very focused specifically still on Great Island, and I wouldn't want them to be distracted from, some of the other things that we've already had going.
I don't know how H&H is going to handle
I
that.
think that
I know they've got a question for us on how we feel about Great Island, and I think I'd like to have
yeah, I
a
think
comment about that.
certainly in the survey, they specifically called them out differently because the parks, again, Cherry Lawn, Weed Beach, Pear Tree, there's already things going on here. Different things that need to be considered, upgraded, changed, expanded, modified, whatever it is. And so those issues still need to be somehow discussed, possibly addressed. Maybe there's recommendations on, we talk about paddle, pickleball, whatever it may be. Maybe we need more parking in one area, less parking, whatever it might be. Certainly Great Island is a whole different thing. They're in the process of doing their own separate master plan, which the Planning and Zoning Commission acknowledges that the Great Island master plan should be done, you think, early next year, John? Late this year, maybe?
The strategy document will be done in July.
July.
Yeah, so, and then Planning and Zoning will look at that document and decide how that fits into the big town plan. But certainly it does have an impact because we don't know what the recommendations will be for that. It may be a more active area. It may be more passive. Maybe bringing different things than are elsewhere in town that we have now. So I'll be just as curious as anyone else to kind of see how it all shakes out there, because that could certainly have an effect on what's done in some of our parks.
I don't see any way, Chris, to answer your question, I don't see any way to consider that a separate item. And the only reason I feel that way is because we're tasked with efficient use of green space. You can't take the single biggest piece of green space out of it. Like, you just can't. So it's like, I think it has to be treated as one thing, or at least has to be handled in that context. And frankly, it leads me to the question about where will Great Island planning line up with us having to do our master plan? Because
And that's
if
an
that still has a
interesting-
big question mark on it,
Yeah.
that's a problem for
I
us.
don't,
So,
we're a year and a half to 2 years away from that, but
yeah.
unless Great Island were to be designated a park, and we're a long way from even thinking about that, I don't know that our parks master plan would.
It's not necessarily
incorporate it, but we'd have to figure out how to be considering it, so.
Yeah, my point is
Yeah,
not
but
necessarily who has governance over it,
Yeah.
but my point is if we're trying to think about what to do with Cherry Lawn as it relates to green space, like,
Yeah,
Like,
we have to know what is.
Great Island's a pretty big meatball,
Yeah.
regardless of.
Yeah, if they're gonna put a pool on Great Island, I'm not saying they're doing that, but if they're putting a big pool there, you don't have to do that in the Parks and
Right,
Rec master
right,
plan.
exactly.
So
Right.
the idea that this is sequenced a bit, where the Great Island strategy is gonna be articulated this summer, you guys just key off of that, so,
Right.
okay, well, given that they're doing X, we don't have to do X, we'll focus
Right,
on Y.
or given that they didn't do X,
Then we can
Right.
cut that ball.
And then,
then, yeah.
and then Jeremy, my only comment on sort of the work with H&H and stuff, if the question is about trends and things, like, one of the things that I'd love and Chris made the point, and I don't need to repeat the whole thing, it was perfect, what he said was, I've been in town 17 years, but I think the change that we anticipate is pretty dramatic in terms of people's tastes, the demographics of town. I mean, the most obvious one is all the units being built and anticipating green space, and we're already just starting to see that in terms of use, traffic, everything else. Coming into now 5 years of higher than normal interest rates has changed housing turnover, which is the type of family. So, the usual sort of progression of families that moved to town, moved to different neighborhoods, was pretty darn consistent for 20 years, and it feels like it's out the window in the last 5. So, and those things seem really hard to plan for.
You're absolutely right, Gary.
And I guess the thing that I've also learned in the little bit of volunteer work that I've done is and this is what I would put into the study, is try to, I don't know how broad their view and their reach is, but to the extent that we can learn from others' lessons learned and not start with blank sheets of paper and have to measure data in town, and maybe our town is different than others and we can consider those things, but the process we sometimes find ourselves on many commissions in town where we need data to make these decisions when you have towns right next door that dealt with the same problem 2 years ago. Those learnings are really, really important and can save commissions years and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on consulting projects to tell you the exact same thing that they already know in an adjacent town. So I know all those things are really hard, but to the extent that, I'm a big fan of lessons learned from others, and as an NFL fan, being a copycat league, that kind of stuff, can be.
Well, unless you're in
Could
school
be really,
plagiarism,
really
it's great.
Yeah,
Everything.
yeah. If that stuff's out on ChatGPT, we can just do it ourselves in about 10 minutes. But but that's the kind of stuff. I'm sure we're not. And again, the big wild card is what Chris said, which is that the whole housing demographic between what's happened with housing turnover or existing stock because of people aren't moving. And then the only other input that I don't know is that I think the trend on schools is, in terms of number of kids in school, is a big input to that
Yeah,
as well.
certainly one thing we've given to, almost the first thing we gave to Hardesty and Hanover, obviously old studies, like the Parks and Rec Master Plan like this, is the most recent Board of Ed enrollment and protection study. They do it every October. So they just did it a couple months ago. First document we gave them, which is, this is from the Board of Ed, whatever it says, and it will change again in 6 months from now as the new group comes through. We got them the birth data from the town clerk. Hey, who's coming through the pipeline? So they get a good feel for what's going on in town. Jen and her team collect a lot of data on park usage, so that'll be a great resource. And just driving around, sitting, even tonight as you drove in.
There were a lot of cars in
I
the
was
parking
like, people
lot.
playing tennis, it's 30 degrees. Like, people want to get out.
Yep.
People want to be out in the sun, when the sun's out doing things. And you're right, there's a big picture that no matter what we write here, what goes on at the state and federal level, with financial markets and all kinds of other things, does drive much of what we do, much of what Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance do, how we manage things. So yes, there's tons of factors here, and you're right. In the old days, you'd start in one house, you move to this part of town, then you bump over here, and then you go to, and there's a lot of people not moving, there's not a lot of inventory. I don't know what's going to change that. I would assume it's got to change eventually, but it's a very different time than it was a few years ago, where you'd have 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 houses on the market all at once in different price ranges. Now, I can tell you exactly what house is on the market, house, because I'll just see 10 people talking about the same house that's on the market.
Right, and the thing that jumped out to me when I was reading this goes with what Terry and Chris was saying, is more about the future trends.
Yeah.
You know, as we look at how many people are coming in, 400 plus apartments, what are being added with
I
all
think
the
600.
projects that we have. The renters, it's all rentals too, they're not homeowners.
Some are,
So they're gonna be
mostly
transient.
rentals, some condo owners. Sedgwick will be condos, but you're right, many renters, many more
The
than,
larger projects.
Yeah,
Right,
right.
so it'll be transient, you know, and those folks are gonna be the ones who will be using also our parks, and we just don't have the space really to grow our parks any more than they are today, right? So parking spaces, et cetera, green space, it is what it is today. We can't just pull it out of anywhere else, right? So that's something that we need to address as we look forward. How are we gonna accommodate the needs of these
Right.
folks and what their expectations are?
yeah.
And then the trick we have in the push-pull is the balance between parks and recreation. And we have, many people in town are, very much on the conservation and, green space, which we understand, but we also have a very healthy, active, recreationally oriented population who use our parks very actively. And the numbers are increasing. We're seeing, the demand for courts, for this, for that. And, I think in this, you kind of labeled them the active parks versus the passive parks. When you take out, Woodland and Selleck and Diller and what else am I forgetting?
Stony Brook Park,
Stony
Freight
Brook,
Park,
whatever. We really only have a handful of park properties where we can offer the recreational opportunities that our constituents want, and that national data shows, we read the Parks and Rec, that is very important for a healthy, vibrant community, and mental health, which John, you talk about so much. So it's that push-pull of, we understand the importance for green space and whatever, but we also understand that people need to get outside, to kick a ball around with their kids, to have somewhere to go, to teach them to ride their bikes. And then that's where we as a commission are so challenged with coming to those balances, and we have had to have those hard discussions, and we hear the public comment, and I think we've all been very proud of this commission being really thoughtful in terms of trying to balance those two things, because they're both important. They're both really important, and that's with limited parcels. It's going to get harder. It's going to get harder. I think other than Thorndal, those properties don't really have any meaningful green space. Certainly the Commons doesn't. I don't think the one down the street, whatever that's being called, is. There's just not a lot of, there just isn't. So we need to anticipate, and we are already seeing that those people are going to be out using our parks. And I think Tilly, which has always been a quiet park, my guess is that's going to get a lot more usage as David's property's really come online because it's gonna be a short walking distance, and it's such a pretty park.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Such a pretty park. So, you know,
Yeah, one thing Neil asked here is, has utilization, is that the public looked for different things in the parks through the years? We talked earlier about pickleball obviously didn't exist. That's obviously a new thing. Have you found certain activities, there's more demand than there used to be, or certain things, oh, people don't do that anymore, there's no demand? Anything like that?
Well, I would say certainly, and again, this might be, it's hard to chicken or egg this one,
Yep.
but it appears the playground projects have been really successful in terms
Yeah,
of use.
sure.
I mean, we never really talked about parking at Baker or Cherry Lawn, and we suddenly find ourselves talking about parking at both a lot. And the only
Driving into the
change,
playground.
there's less baseball at Cherry Lawn. There's more pickleball and there's more playground, and so those are very obvious. Pickleball probably deserves a category on its own because I don't know. I mean, the thing that so this is my first year on the commission, but the thing that jumped off at me was we collected almost $10,000 in reservation fees last year, which I don't think anything has gone from zero to that in that kind of speed on 4 little courts. So I mean that's clearly something from a demand perspective we have to address. One interesting thing I think we should probably look at is the use of our fields. Jen would probably know better than me, but I sense in terms of use of the fields, like by official, youth or sport, I think it's down over if you look on like a 10-year basis, and I think that's just a function of partially less kids and partially a preference for turf. But
I mean, not really. We don't have enough space. Everyone's coming to us for more, whether it's soccer, lacrosse is now becoming bigger, so there's more interest in that. So trying to find field space is actually difficult for us. So again, then it's, do you turf something or do you keep it grass, or because there will be the extra turnover. So
Yeah.
it's
you should
always
trust
hard
her. You should trust her numbers before more than my field. But it just seems to me like there's just less soccer at town hall than there used to be. But
well, because everybody's like trying to share time, so they're out on the fields. Baseball, softball, soccer, they're all out there at the same time, like in little corners. So it's just, luckily it's working that the groups are coordinating and working well together. But that is one thing that is definitely, and I think it will just continue to be an issue. And that goes along with the education numbers, right? So, and the school enrollments and populations and how the other housing units come on board.
And I think we talked about, and maybe people here, more of a demand for very young people getting involved, 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds in more organized sports maybe than in the past. I don't know if you've seen that, or that's
see that through our offerings, Jen?
The sign-ups are going like that, right, when the kids sign up?
I mean, our signups, I mean, things are selling out in no time. I mean, there's more and more demand for everything. I mean, we saw the spring, summer registration. I mean, the first 5 minutes, the first hour were significantly more than they were last year, So in the first day, it wasn't as much, but people know they've got to get in there fast because otherwise it's going to sell out. So I think we are seeing that there's more interest in a variety of things. We're trying to offer, again, a wider variety of programs. So it's not just sports, right? There's things for whether it might be music or art or some cooking things. I mean, we offer, like during the holiday, we'll do a quick cupcake decorating thing or whatever, and it sells out in no time. So everybody's looking for stuff to do, especially, I think, little young children.
Yeah, I feel like there was a pandemic effect that when people were home, that a lot of people hadn't really discovered our parks. Because they couldn't go anywhere, they couldn't travel, they're like, okay, I gotta get the kids out of the house. And it just felt like people kind of got out to our parks and went, oh, I really never spent time in here. This is actually really great, taking my kid on a hike through Selleck or over this. And then I think once they discover that activity is seen, and where I've seen it personally is down here. like on a nice evening, especially a Friday night, you know, we used
Oh,
to
yeah.
come down 35 years ago when my kids were toddlers with friends, and we had like the place to ourselves. We used to go to a private beach. You come down here now, you can barely get a parking space on a Friday night. It's fabulous, I mean, whatever. But yeah, we joke now, like, oh, I guess the word got out. But we're just, I think people discovered them, and they really are like, oh, you know, there's really some great stuff, you know, right here in town. And, you know, whether it's the concerts that we do or things that really
For the
attract
reason it's
people.
time to go Weed Beach.
Yeah. So it just kind of felt like there was this discovery that then has held on. And of course, we had a lot of families, as you know, all moving to town during the pandemic, so.
In the next,
Kayaks too, right? I mean, kayaks weren't.
Yeah,
Kayak rentals
rentals.
are a newer thing.
Right,
Yeah.
I mean, kayaks, that's one of the things, is how much more space can we have? We have tons of people that don't get in through our lottery. Tennis, as you said, tennis is going on here. Tennis is one of our biggest offerings, tennis lessons, and, I mean, in some communities it died off. It did come back a lot with COVID. You saw that kind of regenerate, but, I mean, we have, our tennis lessons go like hotcakes. I mean, so there's a huge demand for that too.
is there in the next 10 years, I mean, I know that we've got certain restrictions around Highland. Can or will any of those be changed in terms of usage over the
I think
next
that's
10 years?
more than 10 years, isn't it?
20 of
When we bought that property, the price that we bought it at carried restrictions in terms of what we
Yeah.
could develop. And when those, it's at least 10 years before they expire.
From now, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I have
I don't remember the
25 years in
number.
my head.
No, we'll leave it for the next group.
Yeah, I think it's 17 years from purchase or something. I'd have to look it up,
Yeah,
but
it's something.
somewhere like that.
You're still a chairman then, so I mean, you can.
Great, so yeah, so we're quite, yeah. Yay.
That's okay, you'll be helped by Jeremy. You'll
That's
still be
right.
happy
We're
with
still
that.
Director of land use, yeah, so we're quite restricted there.
Okay.
But as you said, maybe in, not in this plan, but the next plan, there is more, a little flexibility there. There's still some restrictions, but maybe there's a little more flexibility down the road for that.
Yeah.
But that was an opportunity that this town plan would have, although it talks about land purchases and things, who knew? The same with Great Island. We would have never guessed that that would be an opportunity that just floats, and you never know when those happen. So it's important for this plan and any plan to be a little flexible, because you never know what may happen. We've seen that if it's sometimes too restrictive, that's too constraining, but you want to be understanding of the environment you're in, but also open to unexpected events at the state and federal level, unexpected opportunities, you know, grants that come your way, donations that come your way, whatever it might be. So open to understanding, hey, let's take advantage of this chance we have. And you have a lot of demands. Where can we fit everything that the community is looking for? So,
What about access to these parks? Like if I was at Hindley and I was gonna ride my bike, it's hard to get down here. You can't take a double stroller or stroller down the sidewalk. And I think if we focus more on the sidewalks and accessibility to these parks, you can have kids from this neighborhood going down that neighborhood, not always having to drive, which will reduce the ingestion of parking, or using Hindley for parking and being able to come down here. I mean, it's a liability for the town to have kids going back and forth up and down Nearwater at some point, will be. Those trees keep growing, but.
I think some of the trees came down today.
Yes, that's true. So if you take the Nearwater sidewalks from the post road down to Weed Beach, you can kind of divide it into three parts. So what we have repaved is the middle part. You go there, plenty of room, it's great. The lower part down there by Weed Beach, that was very complicated, lots of tree controversies. And I think to your point that they took out some of those.
Some came down today.
Came down today. So that's teeing up the redoing of those sidewalks, and that'll be fine. So you'll have the middle and the bottom section done. That top section that's up by Hindley, there are quite a few really gorgeous, perfectly healthy, no problem trees that are growing right in the middle of those sidewalks. And there is not an easy solution to that. And so that's kind of our next thing. And we're going to need to work through that. We want to balance tree canopy. Those are gorgeous trees.
Which I agree.
The street is absolutely fantastic. But in terms of an easy solution for where to put sidewalks, which need to be safe, they need to be flat, they need to be ADA compliant. that's a real problem. We've got a problem with that.
Suspension bridge.
Mr. Bach has agreed to pay for a suspension bridge.
Well, John, I think last night at the Board of Finance meeting, they approved a study or to work with a contractor, or not contractor, consultant to come in and
Yeah,
look at
that's a
sidewalks.
consultant to help us prioritize that. That's actually more focused on new sidewalks as opposed to repair of existing sidewalks.
Okay.
And I was interested, Jeremy, I mean, one of the questions here is the plan outdated or is it still valid? You know, to what extent have we made progress? And I went through and looked at, you know, sort of each park had, you know, 6 to 10 different bullet recommendations. And I'd say park by park, you could go through and you could take, you know, like some of them were done. You know,
Sure.
Freight Park, we didn't do anything, I'll admit it. But I think we've chipped away, but I don't think there would be a single one where we could say, yep, got that one licked, we've got everything covered. So I'd say we've made progress toward them, but certainly not been able to complete them by any stretch of the imagination. And, you know, it says, what are the challenges? It comes down to resources, human and capital.
Absolutely right. And I think when we talk about the recommendations and action steps in this plan, not all of them were done. In fact, I just emailed John earlier today. Some of them were, some of them were not, for whatever reason. Whether it's human capital, not enough man hours, volunteer hours, not enough money, you know. Sure, there's only a certain amount of money and we have to prioritize. What are the issues? Or, as John just mentioned, we'd love to have better sidewalks on Nearwater. Oh, we have these constraints. How do we deal with those constraints? So everything's a little bit of a trade-off. Priorities change, the environment we live in changes, and opportunities come up. Whether it was a Diller, that was a great opportunity that we followed up on, and other things that, well, maybe we didn't get it done in the last 10-year plan, but you know what? That's still a valid idea or a good thought. So as you all kind of drive around town and think of things, or feel free to email me, go on the website. You can email Neil in Hardesty and Hanover, hey, what about this? Or you might see us at one of the events, and hey, you know what? I'm on Park and Rec, I had some comments, but I also have some thoughts about whatever it is, traffic, parking, development, growth, whatever it might be. And Neil's going to take all these comments, we're going to kick them around, and we love hearing thoughts and ideas. Where should the town be headed? Which directions? What issues should we take? What issues are not issues anymore? What issues are important to the community? So it's a perfect chance for everyone, as you see something, go around. Oh boy, wouldn't it be better if this were redeveloped? Or how could we redevelop this? Or here's an idea for what the town can do with whatever. And it may not be something we need next week or next month, but hey, within the next 10 years, maybe we need a whatever. So it's a great opportunity for everyone to become involved. We have more ways now with websites and email, much easier than running to town hall all the time. We want to hear from you. That's why we're here. That's why John said.
See you, that's okay.
Yeah. So.
What other of these questions do you want to, because
Yeah,
there's quite
I
a
think,
long list.
I don't want to take too much of your time. I know we talked a little bit about environmental sustainability as part of the Pear Tree project. That project,
And the Weed Beach project.
and Weed Beach as well, is to look at larger storms which are impacting, I know where Jennifer has to get her guys out after each storm, fixing things up. I was around when the Weed Beach clubhouse got damaged in one of the storms about almost 20 years ago now. We're like, and it was rebuilt and it's the higher elevation and we've minimized repair costs because it's getting damaged less than it used to. So hopefully at Pear Tree we can save some money, get a more usable beach on different days. It's going to cost some money, but the trade-off is better days at the beach. Here at Weed as well, building some sand dunes to minimize erosion might help as well. So these are the two parks most impacted by, I'll call it sea level rise and other impacts of weather, not so much the inland properties owned by the town.
There was a question here, it was sort of like, what can you do for us?
Yeah.
You know, so in terms of POCD, you know, that can help support us. And I mentioned this to Steve Olvani, I think at one of the OPC meetings, but to the extent that these consultants have the ability to give us information on sort of what are like the ideal or targets for, you know, recreation space, or is there data that says, you know, for a town of 21,000 people, you know, ideally you have, you know, a tenth of an acre of open space per people. I'm making this up totally.
Right, or 50
on average you need
tennis courts.
15
right.
tennis courts or whatever. Whether in all the work they do for other towns, there's information, because, you know, we're just trying to figure out, well, you know, it feels like we have the right amount of tennis courts, but maybe we do, you know, we're just sort of feeling our way through. But
Yeah.
to the extent there's data and information that
There
they
is-
can help
there
us
is,
with.
There are standards, and I know there used to be books that would come out. And again, it's kind of interesting because it does vary a little bit from where you are in the country, of course, and what might be very hot in New England. Everyone does that in New England. In Arizona, yeah, people don't do that in Arizona or wherever. But there are general standards for, I'll call it basketball courts, tennis courts, other things. And, you know, maybe basketball's not as big in Darien, but yeah, maybe swimming in this climate isn't as big as it would be if we lived in Houston, where maybe they need more swimming pools, right? So there are some general standards. We can certainly look at those and just get a flavor for, hey, here's the vanilla standards. Here's what Darien has, but also Jen can get us data on, yeah, here's where the demand is. Yeah, there is still a demand for tennis. Paddle doesn't exist in most parts of America. It's a New England thing.
It's a New England thing.
But there's still demand. We just added a court over here, if I recall. So, beaches. We all take for granted that we can walk to the beach or drive to the beach. And we're here at the beach tonight. If you look at a map of America,
It's not.
not happening. Maybe they have lakes, but they certainly don't have the beach. So we can certainly get that data. And even if we don't have it for this plan, they'll want it for the Park and Rec Master Plan. Because in that Park and Rec Master Plan, you'll do a deep dive on those kind of computations and analyses.
Okay.
So,
Other thoughts on top? I want to make sure we've covered what you feel.
Yeah, I think this has been a great
consultant needs,
conversation
Or as you
to-
guys read this, anything that you jotted notes that you want to make sure you shared? All right, Janet, and everybody's good?
Thank you all. This is great. I appreciate taking time out of your day, and feel free to fill out the survey. Feel free to email
Please
us
fill
on the
out the
website.
survey.
And look forward to seeing you all at various town events to talk about the plan. So thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Thank you for all your support on everything.
Sure,
That he's
sure.
an amazing partner. Okay, excellent. Okay. Might tie you, Jim. Mike. Oh, no, we're already over an hour. Never mind.
Oh, for last week's.
Giving me a hard time when Jim chose for me last week. His meeting was the shortest ever.
Oh, yeah, it was really.
Yeah, I know. I heard about it. Okay, Jen, your report.
Nope. Mary Louise.
Mary Louise's report. Oops.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry.
Briefly, the big news is that Cherry Lawn Community Gardens will be celebrating their 50th anniversary on June 28th, which is a Saturday. And you, of course, are all invited and encouraged to come. John, I understand, has agreed to speak. And there is a rain date on Sunday. Well, hopefully that will not be needed. But there's going to be a lot happening with raffles and food, books, vases, garden ephemera, all kinds of stuff. And they're working to expand that now. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to run from 1 to 4 o'clock. Our cleanup days at Cherry Lawn Gardens are scheduled for the 26th and 27th of this month. And as you know, if you do not clean your paths and your garden, you get thrown out of the garden. Chips are being delivered for the paths, and that will happen prior to the 26th and 27th. There are currently 2 open plots, and 5 potentially. We will know by April 11th whether there are those additional 5. We've not heard from a few people. So that basically is it. I'm going to be meeting with Jen and Lori in the next few days in terms of establishing what the budget is for the arboreal landscape group and where we're headed in the short term and also into the next year. So that's pretty much it.
So you'll be going onto the waiting list for the plots and
Yes.
handing those
We
out?
will start with the waiting list,
Yeah.
but it's been a while since that's been updated. So I think there is potential for people who still want a garden.
I'm on the waiting list.
I know. Okay, so we'll see.
Well, you didn't get your tennis spot, so.
Could you repeat the date for the birthday celebration?
Pardon?
June 28th.
June 28th.
June 28th.
28 and 29 is the rain date. It's a Saturday, Sunday.
Excellent. Always good when gardening season starts. Okay, now to the report.
All right. Well, just to touch on a few things, it was, my report was in your packet. Just, again, with the Weed Beach project, those documents, the bid documents are up, they are posted. Bids are due in on May 8th, so we will see how they come in, and then we'll be going from there. The plan is to then, as was mentioned earlier, we would have to go through bond appropriation, authorization. That would happen, so the plan is that that would then be hopefully determined by the end of June by going through the RTM, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance. So we will see where all of that comes out. Pear Tree, those documents are being finalized for going out to bid. The playground, again, Baker, we've now got the accessible matting is down. And I'm just working on, again, still, the weather has, we had the tease of a really nice day for like 1 or 2 days, and then it's dropped and been pretty cold. So still working to schedule the installation for the walkway that will be there to make it truly accessible. And you may remember Cherry Lawn basketball court, that also, because with the cracks that's in there, that too, we're just waiting on the weather to warm up, so we're waiting for that to get scheduled. Those were ARPA funding.
Do the same people do the pickleball court cracks?
I have to be in touch with them to see if they could do that as well. It's two separate things. I don't know if that same process might work on it. So we're trying to get them out to take a look at those cracks as well to see how we can repair.
Somebody reached out to
The
me
ones
about
that, the ones at Cherry
surface
Lawn.
there.
Yeah.
It cracked
Does need it.
very
Yeah.
badly this year.
Yeah, so we'll be looking at that as well. As was mentioned earlier, the budget so far has made it through Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance. I think the only thing that was removed was the capital request for the financial sustainability strategy. I think everything else is making it through so far, so we just have the RTM left to go.
That's right.
Then was the sound system reduced?
I think it was reduced to one speaker.
Oh, the one, yeah, okay, yeah, so that is in there, it's still in there, but after speaking with the people with the company, the thought was that it would be sufficient for what we do. If not, and we find that we need the additional speaker, we could always get that and then add it on later, so we will see. Hopefully, because it's a better quality, that the sound when you turn it, it will just project better. What happens with the systems like that we have and everything is once you try to turn the volume up, it just gets muddy and it doesn't project very well. So hopefully that will solve our issues. Again, spring registration was up almost 5% over last year. Again, you have numbers in my report. The interesting thing was our summer registration was down about 3%, and we think part of that is because not knowing about school, we didn't run some things about that last week of school. So we are going to put in probably some 4-day programs in there, and those I'm sure will probably fill up very quickly, so that will probably kind of even us out and get us back.
Also,
where we
are
would've
people may still sign up for summer?
Oh, yeah, they could still sign up, but even just, I think, because we offered a little bit less than we had in the past, so that will help kind of round it out, but, so we should be, we expect to be doing okay there. The pickle roll funding did pass last night, so that will be moving forward. Also, we had talked a little bit about camp last time, so just to let you know, so Janice Marzano is our camp coordinator this year. So we're just working closely with her and with the camp directors, just trying to make sure that everything is handled so that we get the camp moving through this year. We know how important that is for the residents.
That's huge.
It's
Getting
yeah.
Janice.
Yes,
Janice.
yeah, so she's been working, we're kind of tag teaming things. She's doing the bookings and everything, and then you know, I'm kind of handling the contracts and payments and that kind of stuff. And the camp directors, I met with them all on Friday night. I had dinner with all of them, got to meet them, and so they're all working. They're chipping in extra as well to make sure that this summer goes smoothly and is still a good quality program, which I'm sure it will be. Clearly, a lot of them have been there for years. So they know everybody, and so it's great. So we're just coming together, moving it forward, so everybody's really chipping in the office too. And then just in terms of some of our park stuff, so our park staff, they've completed our spring cleanup, and the athletic fields were already out this past weekend. Was like the first weekend doing all the fields for Little League. So all of that has started up. We've already started some of the grooming on the beaches. And again, a lot will still have to happen as the temperatures hopefully warm up. They're going to be doing some painting on the dugouts at Holohan Field, as well as we have some decks out here. As I mentioned last time, they did a lot of deck replacement. It was all rotted even underneath here at the bathhouse. And actually there are a bunch of shingles missing, so we're going to be doing some roof repairs. Hopefully it'll be done tomorrow. They were going to do it today, but it was a little chilly to be out there.
Jen?
And yesterday they would have blown off the roof, so we...
Would they be putting like a fresh coat of paint on just like the pillars and things like that?
That's part of what they were going to
Okay.
be painting, but it's just been too cold, so
Okay. Yeah.
once that warms up a little bit, they'll be doing that. And then just in terms of, the main thing that we have coming up is May 18th is Adventure Day over at Selleck Woods, so we're getting geared up for that, and
And you have trail cleanup right before that, right?
yes, there's a trail cleanup on the 27th of April, actually this month,
Yeah.
April 27th.
And when do the,
27th or 28th?
and when do the bathrooms open at the beaches?
Would ask me that.
I'm sorry. All right.
No, it's short, it's very soon,
So, at least here.
yes.
This is a minor thing, but the bathrooms down at Pear Tree, the lights, we still don't have covers for those lights.
Yeah, what was, they couldn't get them?
I think they're gone at this point. Maybe we can just order new covers, because right now bulbs are exposed.
Yeah,
So,
I know we had hoped to replace those fixtures if we couldn't. I think they're just so old, you can't get those covers
Yeah.
anymore.
Did you hear about the covers for the lights?
Yes, yeah, the ones at Pear Tree bathrooms, yes.
You think were
They're
they?
really old fixtures.
Yeah.
So I think we would have to replace the whole.
I'll touch base with Sandy about that and see where that is.
He took a call.
And then
okay.
Jim, I think, had let you guys know that the scooper broke at Baker already.
Yes, so Sandy had taken a look, we had heard about that, we knew about it like the day before as well. I don't think it's actually broken, Sandy, look, it's like a screw
That's what I was hoping.
backed out but it's not like a normal screw. So I've been in touch with them. So of course. He was like, of course, it's not something that he could just go to the store and pick up. So they're working on getting me some parts to get that
Okay.
fixed.
As like Chris, I think right after we opened Cherry, remember there was some grommet you were like, this is broken, and that Sandy was able to go and fix.
Right.
But
Yeah, so this, we would have done it, but we need the part.
but that picture you sent was so funny. There was a little kid who was like,
Grandson.
oh, it was your grandson? Oh, it's the funniest picture.
He gets on it and goes, it won't move. The whole thing broken off on the side.
It was such a sad face.
Yeah.
Hey, at least it's not like a McGuan situation with the.
The spinner that we had to take offline for 6 months. So there's going to be some of those
little things,
little bumps. But if you guys see those things when you're out and about, I'm happy to have you let me know. But it's best to get it to Jen and Sandy in particular, because he can get the crew out right away, and they are so talented and handy. A lot of times they're things that
And they've done a great job with the landscaping around the park, because, typically you would throw down a straw and then just the straw goes everywhere, but they put this netting over it now to keep it down, so grass is gonna come up nice over there. My only concern would be, and I think we still have to put a path in anyway, but for wheelchair access.
the path still has to go in.
But that piece of grass from the parking lot to the playground, I know they threw seed down, but it probably needs to not be walked on for a while for the grass to come up. So,
Which once we put in the walkway, we might be able to, mark it off, coordinate off or something, and let the grass come in a little bit. Yeah, because it's obviously they were bringing trucks in, we had piles of dirt there and everything, but the company that did the installation came back and did that work around the side. We were really pleased. I didn't think they were gonna go that far. I was like, oh, they did a very nice job with that. So even with the slopes and everything with it.
That's nice.
That looks good.
Yeah, and it's a lot of kids over there.
I got some time tomorrow, but check it out.
Now we just need the grass to grow.
And who was it?
It's getting
there.
there.
Said there were like 20. Who was it? Said there were Chris. Or there were like 20 kids there or something.
Yeah,
it was like really.
Yeah,
You said it was
full
popping.
too.
Yeah.
Always
It's really
a lot of
really
kids,
awesome.
yeah.
So
Excellent.
we got a lot of happy kids in town. It's really great work.
But I would like to still have some form of acknowledging.
Yeah, I know. We gotta
About
figure that out. Yeah, but I want to make sure we acknowledge everybody who worked on all of the playgrounds and sort of they're all done now, and we gotta figure out the best way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I feel like it wouldn't all be at the same location though.
That's what I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
How we figure that
Do you
out.
do 3 different ones or just
I don't know if
one?
you do 3 different, because we were gonna do a ribbon cutting from McGuan, but then the spinner broke right away, and it was all taped off, and we're like, what sort of stinks to do a ribbon cutting when you're like, okay, one of the best pieces of equipment can't be used. And then, so we kind of postponed, it just kind of never happened, because remember how long that took to get that replaced. And then Cherry opened, I think it was like in August.
Right, no one was there.
And sort of nobody was around. So I'm just sensitive, we gotta do that. So let's put our heads together and figure out how we can, or other people have ideas, how we can do a little celebration and acknowledgement. I think we should do that for sure.
I mean, we could do it at Baker just because it's the newest.
It's the newest, yeah, and invite everybody.
Yeah, but then once it's all done.
Yep. Yeah, and maybe, you can't really trot people around to 3 different locations, so I don't think that's gonna work. So, okay, but yes, we should do that, for sure. Done. Questions for Jen before I go? Okay. The Coastal Commission met, while I was gone, but I watched the meeting back. They've been working for a year and a half now on updating the ordinances regard to harbor management. They advanced those to the selectmen, who have now referred them over to the RTM. I know Adele's been working on it, Susan Marks and some others. So the various RTM committees are considering those. They've determined that a public hearing will be needed to really get that information and the changes out to the public. So that'll take some time, and then there's like a 60-day waiting period, so.
It's long and.
It's long and slow, but it'll be kind of rolling along. Doesn't really directly affect us, but, you know, sort of harbors, you know, tangent to some of our properties, and, you know, there's moorings right off the beach and off of Pear Tree and such, so just wanted to keep you all posted on that. The Coastal Commission has organized they've been doing this annual cleanup day, starting over at Pear Tree on April 19th at 9 a.m. That is Easter weekend, which is kind of a tough weekend. I know it's not going to work for me, but they've certainly invited anybody.
18th or 19th?
19th, it's a Saturday. Anybody who would like to, from this commission, go and wear rubber boots and gloves and pick up garbage. They always get a lot of stuff. So it's a nice service they provide to help clean up the beaches and up the river towards the boat club. Let's see, we got, skip over things we've already talked about. We covered the budget. Dog fines. So the selectmen have recommended $100 off-leash dog fine. Jen and I have been doing some research on what the fine for the parks, violations in the parks is. And we found various things in various places. So the bottom line is it's clear as mud. So we're going to need to do some work on that in short order. I think we heard earlier that the RTM hopes to take that up at your April meeting.
Hope to, but you
Right.
know, you never know about these things.
Yeah, no, we set our
Plan.
own. I think there's a feeling from what I've heard from Don and Monica and that it would be ideal to have them be the same. But we're going to have to take that up probably at a future meeting in terms of it's really not that I can find really codified anywhere that you could put your hands on what the commission has established as our fine. And when you look in the parks, you know, one sign like over at Woodland, it says $75. I mean, there's just different things, different places. The police think it's $49. There's add-ons from the state, so we're gonna have to do a little bit of work around that, so just.
One thing to add, so the ordinances say that we can charge a fine for leash violations, and it refers to what's called Appendix D in the ordinances, which is a list of fines that the town can charge for violations of our ordinances or the charter itself. But there's no dog leash fine listed. And so that's the enablement that I think allows the RTM to then pick up this and do what we requested, which is, okay, the ordinance says we can fine, could you please put the fine number into the Exhibit D or Appendix D? Our view is that a consistent fine across the town that's super simple, that's a single number that you just look at and that's the fine. That's going to be the easiest thing to administer. There is this administrative fee that the state charges for such fines of $24. So what you'll end up paying is whatever the fine is plus $24, but we don't need that in our ordinances. It's a given. I think the specter of a fine will have a lot of deterrent value for people leaving their dogs off leash. And if we start to publicize that, and we're gentle with the rollouts, in other words, this is the fine, this is coming, and all that, I think as a town, it would be good to clean this up across town and just get better leash compliance everywhere. It's never going to be perfect. And let's try this fine structure. If it really doesn't work, and there's significant town interest in continuing to advance the idea of enforcement and compliance with our leash laws, then we can certainly go back to the RTM and change the schedule. But my view is that we should give it a try. There's a lot of folks who support dogs on our public properties. I don't think anybody has come up and said, we want our dogs off leash. And if they're doing it, it's really because they know they're not supposed to be. So let's try this and see what happens. But it'd be great to be consistent with the park. So once it's approved by the RTM, I just request you guys consider that.
Yeah, but again, and get it where it's.
We'll go down and eventually have bikes. Well, is that the plan? I know right now you can't take a bike on.
It's TBD. I don't think that's been concluded yet.
Yeah, the problem is it's a bikes and people thing.
Right.
And so if you're going to do it, you got to come up with some way to separate them. And given the
bikes and
given the infrastructure we have there, it's not an easy problem to solve. What was that?
So I mean, we have bikes, people and cars on the road.
On Great Island itself?
No, but like on the road in general, like bikes. I mean, I'm not sure what you mean. Like bikes.
Well, no, it's bikes versus people, not bikes versus cars, that's one thing. But to have people out for a stroll and then kids zipping by on bikes, that's the problem. It's different.
But I mean, right now, we have people walking to Great Island, biking on that same road, driving on that same road.
Yeah, but it's
I mean, I guess I'm
it's
thinking
different
it's-
than the experience, which you like to be able to walk on Great Island. It's quiet, you can wander and meander and let your mind, but instead of maybe New York City, yes, we could have that experience. I just don't think that's what people want. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's what.
That seemed to be the sense for there's like, can, bike lanes be created, and I think that's all the
Oh,
stuff
you were
that's
thinking
being
bike
looked at, but that's, so.
And is there any changes with the entryway, or is that still being, still TBD?
Well, the trees there was a hearing on March 4th, and we're waiting for a judge to decide. The judge could take up to 120 days to do that, but we're hoping for something sooner. Let's see. But the specific decision that's being made is whether the individuals who have sued the tree warden, or essentially appealed the tree warden's decision, better said, whether they have standing to do so. And so the judge will rule on that question, to be determined.
Okay, all right, so we'll talk about the dog fines at a future meeting, get that buttoned up and better codified. Great Island Master Plan is coming along. I'm not gonna, it's, ideally it's best to kind of watch the meetings or go to the tape or the information that's online. But definitely honing in on ideas for the master plan, which, as we mentioned earlier, is expected to be completed by July. We got tonight the 4th.
Is the advisory committee, have you talked about, the dam replacement project that's on Rings End Bridge?
No.
That's separate from Great Island. That's
Right,
Yeah.
but do you think that, are you expecting that to sort of, maybe this summer as that goes on? I think it's like a 7-month project.
that project will
can't
be
speak to
finished in
that.
October.
In October, okay, so I'm just wondering if maybe this summer there will be less visitors to Great Island.
I don't know. I mean,
I wonder if
Most
it
of
would
the-
have any
well,
effect.
The bridge is under repair, but you will still have 2-lane access on the bridge. Right, most of the heavy work that was required was putting in the islands.
Highlands,
And
yeah.
so now the work actually can continue on the side of the bridge, so the bridge itself is not what's being repaired, it's the
Okay.
dam.
Okay,
And so that work can continue and the bridge will be unimpeded. So
Okay.
that work's not going to impact Great Island traffic or traffic generally in that.
okay, so blocking one of the ways on the bridge was just for the pilings
Correct.
themselves?
Yeah,
Okay.
so two-lane access is not going to be impaired going forward.
I just, a real quick one for you, Jen. At last month's meeting, you mentioned the concerts. We would not have summer concerts this year. Has anything changed since last month, or is that pretty much that's going to be the case?
As of now, that's the case.
Okay.
The issue will be, once Cassie is back, if we can pull some things together for later in the summer. It's just right now, we just don't have the
They just don't have
capacity
it,
to
no.
try to do that.
Okay.
But yeah, so,
Someone asked me, that's why I just said.
Yep.
I tried that.
A couple more things, back on Great Island, just dates to note, May 17th will be the final presentation by Reed Hildebrand and some kind of open house or activity, that's a Saturday.
That's
They
a
can-
workshop even, right?
Or their workshop, which I think maybe is the same day as Adventure Day, or is that Sunday?
that's May
Sunday.
18th, that's
So it's the
Sunday.
day before, okay, so a lot going on that weekend. And then on May 20th, which is a Monday night, George Knight, who's the lead architect, one of the consultants on the project, is going to do a presentation at the library with a lot more information about each of the buildings on Great Island and sort of their history and their architectural significance. I think more about like what might be able to be done with them and such. So
Yeah, if that's your thing, that should be quite good.
If that's your thing, it should be quite interesting.
I'm gonna go with that. That should be actually really good.
What's the date again?
Monday, May 20th. It's at the library. I don't remember the exact time. I guess 7 or 7:30 or something. But that he's very
He's great.
He's great. Yeah, he's very enthusiastic about these buildings and their history and stuff. So, GF, we talked about OPC. I watched your meeting back, John.
May 20th is a Tuesday,
I thought
or
we-
just in case it matters.
She said May 20th, didn't she?
Just because I know our meeting is on the 21st.
Okay, I could have sworn she said May 20th, but I could have sworn she said Monday. But I will verify and let you guys know, unless you know something different.
I've got it on my calendar for the 20th.
For the 20th, okay. John, again, just briefly, he's been work with a consultant who's going to get away from the hanging tags at the parking lot, so longer term in terms of ways to find out if people are permitted or whatever, there, might be possibilities for us in terms of access to parks, but I think you gotta do your thing first.
Yeah, we're gonna sequence this, but they can retire beach stickers.
Yeah, so longer term, that would be something we would have to think about, but in terms of what would that mean in terms of control in the parks and everything, but just be aware that that's something down the road that could have opportunities for us. And I think that was it. I think that was all I had. Okay. If there are any questions, we can take a motion to adjourn. No? You're
Motion.
good? Okay, Chris? Jim? Okay, all in favor? Okay, we're done. Thank you, TV 79.